The Watcher's Warning. The fire watchtower stood tall above the endless expanse of dark, looming woods. The tower known as the Watcher had been abandoned for years, until now, reopened due to a particularly dry season. It was tasked with a single objective: keep watch over the forest for any signs of fire. But as the new lookout, Sam Harper, would soon discover, fires were not the only thing stirring in the woods below. Sam Harper wasn't the man who believed in ghost stories. Fresh out of college and eager for solitude, he had accepted the seasonal fire lookout job, thinking it would be a peaceful escape. The Watcher, as locals called it, was an ancient wooden structure that had been out of commissions for decades. The old-timers in the nearby town of Hollow Pines spoke of strange occurrences in the area, but Sam paid no mind to their warnings. He arrived at the tower on a foggy afternoon. The first thing he noticed was the isolation. No cell service, no internet, just the constant oppressive silence of the surrounding forest. He climbed the narrow creaking stairs to the top of the tower and set up his small living quarters. The watchroom was simple: a bed, a desk, and a chair, besides a large observation window that offered a panoramic view of the dark, dense forest. The first night passed uneventfully, with only the sounds of nocturnal creatures echoing through the trees. But as the hours dragged on, Sam began to feel an unnerving sensation, as if he were being watched. Shaking it off, he attributed the feeling to the sheer vastness of the forest. At around 2 a.m., he noticed something strange. A flicker of light deep in the forest, barely visible through the thick fog. It wasn't the fire, more like a flashlight, moving erratically between the trees. Sam picked up his binoculars, but even with the enhanced view, the light remained elusive, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. Unease began to creep in, but he rationalized it. Perhaps a lost hiker or a camper? The next few days were relatively calm, though Sam couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness settled in, he heard it. A faint voice carried on the wind. It was distant at first, almost impeccable, but it grew louder as the night wore on. Sam froze. The voice was coming from the woods, pleading, desperate. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out onto the narrow balcony that wrapped around the tower. He pointed the beam into the forest, but the dense foliage reflected nothing back.
Help me!
The voice was closer now, just below the tower. Panic gripped him. Who could it be? The area was supposed to be deserted. Grabbing the radio, he tried to contact the nearest ranger station, but the static was the only response. He debated going down to investigate, but hesitated. Something about the voice seemed off. It was hollow, echoing unnaturally, as if it were coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Deciding it was too dangerous to leave the tower at night, he locked the door and waited. The next morning, Sam ventured out of the tower, searching for any signs of the person he heard. He combed through the underbrush, called out, but received no answer as he pushed deeper into the woods. He stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. It was an old, dilapidated cabin, overgrown with vines and almost entirely swallowed by the forest. It wasn't on any maps he'd seen. The door creaked open with a gentle push, revealing a scene frozen in time. Rusted pots, dusty furniture, and a single photograph on the mantel. The photo depicted a group of people, rangers by the look of them, standing in front of the Watcher. In the corner of the room, particularly hidden beneath a collapsed beam, was a small, old radio. Sam picked it up and turned it over in his hands. It crackled to life, static buzzing before a faint voice emerged.
Help me!
Sam dropped the radio in horror. It was the same voice, the same eerie plea from the night before. How could this be? Trembling, he backed out of the cabin and ran back to the tower, not daring to look back. That night, the forest came alive with sounds. Rustling leaves, snapping branches, and that voice. Closer now, circling the tower. Sam was trapped, a prison in his own station. He closed all the windows, locked the doors, and turned off every light, sitting in darkness, hoping whatever was out there would go away. But it didn't. The voice became a choir, multiple voices now, all chanting the same desperate plea. He looked out the window and saw them, figures just at the edge of the tree line, shadowy and indistinct, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They stood there, unmoving, watching the tower.
Help me!
Suddenly, the old radio crackled to life. Sam's heart raced as he picked up the receiver. The ranger station on the other end was finally responding, but their voices was drowned out by the overwhelming static. He could barely make out the words, but one phrase stood clear.
Get out, now, not alone.
Before he could react, the lights in the tower flickered and went out. The door, which he had locked, slowly creaked open. The air turned frigid, and he felt a presence behind him. He didn't dare to turn around, but he could feel it. Cold breath on the back of his neck. Icy fingers reaching for him. In a panic, Sam bolted for the stairs, running down them two at a time. But as he reached the bottom, the chanting voices grew louder, surrounding him from all sides. He sprinted into the forest, not knowing where he was going, only that he had to get away. But the voices followed, growing louder and louder, until they were all he could hear. Days later, a search party found the Watchtower deserted. Sam Harper was never seen again. His belongings were untouched, but the tower's radio was fried, as if hit by a massive power surge. In the following weeks, reports from the surrounding area came in, sightings of a figure wandering the woods at night, pleading for help, only to vanish when approached. The locals started avoiding the area, calling it cursed, and the Watcher once again stood abandoned, its windows reflecting nothing but the endless haunted woods around. To this day, they say if you stand in the woods near the Watcher on a cold, foggy night, you can still hear Sam Harper's voice pleading for help, forever lost in darkness. To this day, they say if you stand in the woods near the Watcher on a cold, foggy night, you can still hear Sam Harper's voice pleading for help, forever lost in the dark.